Hi, this is Can You See My Screen, a podcast dedicated to running better workshops, training and meetings online. I'm Michael Forrest. I do a lot of video production, live streaming and software development.
I'm Ivanka Magic. I do user research, lots of talking to people, workshop, courses and presentations. And with so much of our work going online these days, we thought I've messed it up. I tried to make it up. We thought we could help make this easier and better.
We can make it easier and better, but this is, we're still early on and we're just, I need to just learn my bit, I think. I'm reading it and then I'm not looking at the camera, but we'll get there. It's all good. You get the idea. This week we're talking about, hey, look, this is what it's all about. This is all about how to get comfortable presenting online. One of the biggest things for me was accepting mistakes and just rolling with them, because when we started out recording our first podcast 4 years ago, I tended to edit every single tiny bit of slack out of the whole thing, but now I think I'm happy to leave in some bits and some thinking and some breathing, and that's what we're trying to get to, I think. Like, with a lot of practice, with kind of knowing what to look out for. We're going to talk about some stuff today, like voice coaches and distractions and microphone technique and just practice and editing and all these different things that help you kind of like feel more confident, going live, getting into it, just being on camera in a way now that we all have to more and more. So that is what we've got to look forward to today. Try to find out. Get connected. And I noticed that I did not loop the music and the intro, so we're still working out some kinks. And on this video, you may see some freezes on Ivanka's side. We're using Ecamm Live. It is being a bit funny this week, but it is a good app, so I'm reluctant to leave it. So, where should we start on this today?
I was going to suggest that preparation. What kind of preparation do you need for being comfortable presenting online or being online, or what's one of the weird things that doesn't happen in real life is that you actually spend a lot of time looking at yourself.
Well, speak for yourself.
Whenever you're in these meetings or presenting, you're not just looking at other people, but you're also often presented with a picture of yourself or video of yourself as you're talking, which is a weird mirror. Which that's new. You need to get used to that. And I think then there's also the thing. So I think in the preparation, there's a bit of like psychological preparation, maybe physical preparation, like practicing what you're going to say, removing distractions, and then there's the actual doing it, which I think is slightly different.
And what sort of situation are we kind of focused on here? Like workshops, training, meetings kind of thing? Like, are we talking about a presentation? Are we talking about my app crashing? Are we talking about, what sort of thing are we, what sort of context are we thinking about here?
Well, I think one time where your presentation or you come into focus is not when you're a participant, but when you are the one leading a conversation. Whether you are presenting or workshopping, it doesn't really. I think it's very similar.
Yeah.
But even to participate, you've got to be, just practicing understanding what your voice sounds out loud, when you're talking to people, how you're going to come across. It feels, whilst it might feel weirdly contrived sometimes, just recording your voice, there's nothing, it's weird the first few times, but understanding what you sound like is useful. I think
it is very useful and it's very important, and it is something that we're all subject to. When your voice in your own head sounds different to what it sounds like out in the air through a microphone, because we're getting all these kind of low frequency, like your bones are kind of transmitting this sound into your ears directly from your vocal cords in a way that when you hear just a recording of your voice, you're not getting that kind of internal sound, and it does sound weird and it sounds graspy and you think you sound horrible, but like no one else notices because that's just what you sound like and it's normal, and you're just hearing this sort of like weirdly elevated boomy version of your voice in a way. But so I would recommend, like, I think we are talking about presenting, aren't we? We're talking about standing up in front of some people, like, and sort of being on show, maybe being judged, and that's when it sort of comes.
Or feeling judged, at least.
Feeling judged, you know. So one thing you can practice. You can say things out loud, just, you know, practice speaking, but you can also record your voice and listen back. And you say preparation, but actually, you know, Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, we started that, we just hit record. We didn't know what the podcast was called yet. We just started talking to each other. And the way we kind of came to a bit of confidence was just by week, putting this thing out every week. I would edit everything out, that, you know, I'd edit out all the hesitations, all the misfires, all the things, and because we weren't as good at talking then continuously, we weren't as good at filling, you know, kind of reacting and filling time and listening to each other and all those things that you've got to learn to do to talk to each other every week. And for me, I think I probably got a lot, in a way, like, I really learned about all my little mannerisms and the little things that I say, and started sort of becoming a lot more self-aware just by sort of spending 3, 4, 5 hours every week going through, you know, up to 2 hours of conversation with a fine-tooth comb. So I would recommend, like, just try recording yourself and editing it and releasing it. It's a good way to learn a lot.
A bit of a baptism of fire. I have to say, that first recording we did, my high level that I reached was, I listened to it and I was like, okay, so I'm not embarrassed if that goes out in the world. It's like, there's nothing here to be in, both in my tone, because I think especially as women, I have certainly had people comment when my voice goes high pitched. For example, if I'm incredulous or I'm a bit angry or whatever, my voice goes higher. And so you sort of being conscious of what you sound like is perhaps different to a man. I don't know, I can only speak for myself,
sure,
but there's that sort of like, oh, do I sound, am I allowing all those mannerisms to come into my conversation, these sort of apologetic, that let me just say something, may I, and like they're sort of asking for permission, and sort of growing in confidence to use your voice and to not use words that are constantly asking for permission for things, I think is also, so it's not just tone, breathing, practice, pacing yourself. I mean, many of us, I think, when we present, speak much faster than we do when we were practicing, because the adrenaline kicks in and sometimes you can't even quite breathe properly and your breathing goes a bit shallow and you're like, just got to say it all and then I'm done and then I'll be free. And so sort of like getting that pace, getting the phrases, getting all that right takes the practice, just makes it feel less weird to start, for starters.
And I would recommend to any men, just listen to The Guilty Feminist. It's a different world. I found it very, like, to start off with, it is a different space, but like if you start to embrace it, they're funny. There's some funny stuff. It's a different perspective, but you realise how much women are talked over, how much their tone is policed. Like if you sound too kind of like assertive, then people think, you know, they put certain labels on you. So there's this whole thing of women like walking in and apologizing for everything they say. So not to mansplain what Ivanka has just explained to you, but I would urge any men to go and sort of just listen to a few episodes and start to kind of get the idea. I got fascinated in it. And then the other one is, I mean, we're talking a little bit about a conversation here in a podcast to some extent, because that's where a lot of our experience is. But who was it? Brianna. There was a TED talk which I'll put in the description about listening and how our brains. We can think faster than we can process what we're listening to faster than people can say it. So we have this tendency to be impatient as someone's speaking. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned from doing our podcast together, was just to override that impatience and just wait for Ivanka to finish saying something before I jump in or interrupt. And you hear, I think, like, especially with podcasts, like a lot of podcasters, you hear them just, especially when there's a female guest, there will be a lot of like jumping in, interrupting. And I think to develop that skill where you kind of let women talk or just let another person talk is something that we need to cultivate better.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think, but from you can bring that in both as a host or a presenter, like making sure when you ask people, when you let somebody ask a question, use their name, make sure you're bringing in everybody, make sure you're offering the opportunity for somebody without picking on them, like, you, Hannah, what have you got to say? But more like, has everybody said what they want to say? One of the things that I find weird, or that I find that I need to practice to myself, is if I know the names of the participants. Like, if there's a name I'm not used to saying out loud, such a weird one for me. This is, I don't know if it happens to other people. Like, if it's a name that I'm not used to saying, I'm really apprehensive about saying it in case I'm going to say it wrong.
I mean,
So
I've always had trouble saying names unless I'm really
it's
kind
like,
of familiar with someone.
Yeah, so it's like, right, okay, I'm going to have to use people's names. This is the right way to. So, if I can have the list ahead of time and say the names out loud, especially the ones that I'm not used to saying, just so that I feel like I'm not going to say it in a funny, like, hesitant way. It's like, is that your name? Have I said it right? Those kind of things. That's another. That's one of the things I've properly worked on in the last 2 or 3 years, because I hadn't straight away realized how bad I was at it.
But to come back to the, like, how to get there's all these social aspects, and there's this like like internalized misogyny and things like that. That's a bit of a harsh word for this podcast, but we do have some social things to overcome, interrupting those things. But then there's also technical things we can do and steps we can take before we come in. So don't have your email up, have your phone on do not disturb, because there's it will just flood your brain as soon as you see a red one in a circle anywhere around you. When you'll be in the middle of your flow, you'll notice it, and suddenly that's when the hesitation, that's when the pauses happen. You have to be as present as you can. You need to get that door shut. You need to tell your family that they're not allowed in for the hour, because we need to use our whole brains to kind of keep this thing flowing and keep this presentation going, or whatever it is. And if you're like, oh, I just got a text, I wonder what that is, it just leeches your attention.
And it's like apps that don't respect do not disturb are really annoying on your desktop. I find WhatsApp doesn't have it on my phone. It's like, just make sure that everything is shut off from your notifications, and I think airplane mode on phone is often the best way forward, I find.
Well, I just want to say, airplane mode is not really the right thing. It's do not disturb on a phone, because you can still get alarms and things, and reminders can pop up on your screen. Even if you're in airplane mode, it's not really a network thing. It's a do not disturb thing. And this is something, I have an app that is out in the world that thousands of people use, and if they get notifications, that sort of ruins the whole thing. So I've noticed that do not disturb is the one to use on the desktop. On a Mac, it doesn't work, but on a phone it does work. So you need to but you quit WhatsApp. That's the worst. And just make sure any windows that might have icons. So I'm presenting, we're doing this podcast now, I've got a browser window open, but I've got all of my tabs that aren't the one that I need for this podcast minimized and down there and out the way, and I've quit Discord. And you just have to quit the apps, as Ivanka just said. You have to quit the apps on your desktop. There's no point trying to rely on do not disturb, and actually that can cause problems, because then you don't get the FaceTime call when we start the meeting, and we've had that. So phone, yes, do not disturb. The Mac or the computer, probably don't rely on it.
No, good point. I think that, but I think, which is why chat in these tools is so annoying. I think it's the same thing. Anyway, don't know how you can mute Zoom chat while you're presenting. It's stop.
Yeah, it's a slightly different thing, and we just keep coming back to that etiquette question in that case. But at least it's it's part of the meeting, and it's not just some completely peripheral thing.
I think Yeah, I think that do not disturb though, it goes beyond just what's like in your computer window on the
Mm.
screen. It's like what have you got on your what clutter is there on your desk?
Yeah.
What are the things that are going to be distracting your mind? That, shopping list that's
Yeah.
over there in the corner that you just
Yeah.
might catch at the corner of your eye, or something that, trying to work in a clear space. Or, I have these random post-its that are reminders of other things,
Yeah.
and sometimes they're just not, they're no use to me if I
Yeah.
really need to concentrate. They're not helping me at all. So yeah, I think that's another thing that I try and practice.
Yeah. And yeah, we've talked a lot about the audio, although what we haven't said is microphone technique is something to get the hang of, especially if it's a recording. But I would say I put it in there, but like that's something that we had to figure out early on, and it's nice if you can get the closer you can be to your microphone, the less you're going to hear the distracting sounds in the background. So if you've got your mic a meter away from you and it's on your computer and it's picking up the fan and it's picking up all the stuff in the room and you're kind of in the distance, that's just, I mean, I don't know that that's comfortable presenting online, but you probably need to be, I guess, comfortable with your mic position and kind of like get into a position where you're either standing or seated where you're in the right position for the microphone. And before you don't sort of like, I think not to kind of like put Ivanka on blast, but she often, before we start recording, she'll be sitting in a different way. You'll be sitting in a different way and then I'll be like, oh, your frame's all gone. So just try and like get into the right position that is actually, especially if you're presenting, get comfortable in the right position that you're going to be on camera, because otherwise, sort of your kind of rehearsals aren't necessarily going to be straight.
Yeah.
But then we have the video side of it, which, yeah, well, that feeds into you the way you present can be massively improved by a better camera, by better lighting, by better like a backdrop or whatever it is. There's you the image you're presenting and curating is something that you can work on to just gain confidence that way and gain comfort and go, like, if you're kind of like, oh, I wish that wasn't behind me,
Yeah.
you're, especially when we are like looking at our face so much, where, like, it's hard not to just keep checking. And I do a lot of like, oh, I just want to adjust that frame a little bit, move that down, oh, maybe we'll zoom that out a bit, maybe we'll move. It can be a bit addictive to look, all right, oh, that light's kind of saturating, it's a bit too much red on there. It's good to sort of figure out as much of that stuff as you can. And just I have this huge problem with time of day in the studio I'm in, and actually today I've just pulled the blinds down because the sun starts shining in and it just messes up the whole picture. And we were just talking about lighting, but yeah, if you can get sort of a good front facing even light, then that's probably the hardest part of sort of looking good online. I have a thing on Squares TV I'll link where RuPaul talks about that.
Yeah, I think the distracting, I have to, maybe because as a user researcher, I have been recording myself and my voice for a very long time now. So whenever you listen back to a recording of a user research session, you inevitably see yourself and you hear yourself. And I think, as a user researcher, it's really useful because you can see the times where you go, oh, I just asked that was a rubbish question, or like, I don't know, I whatever it might be, I sort of ask too many questions in a row. Or there's the nice moments when you see your body language and the participants' body language mirror each other. These are not, these are nice things that you observe, but you get used to it. And I find that I stop looking at myself after time in the video, but then when I watch the video back later, I realize how much I touch my face, how many faces I pull, and it's like, and then I think, well, that's who I am, and I would be doing that in person anyway. I'm very bad. I almost got feedback from a colleague who said, I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness, Ivanka, but you have a visceral reaction to everything that's going on around you. That can be both inspiring and really annoying because you can't hide when you think somebody's talking nonsense. So there are certain things that one also has to accept about oneself.
Yes.
I do look like this.
My voice sounds like this. It has these
this,
limitations. My face has these
this,
limitations.
this is who I am.
It's no
It's
one
like, and
seems to
that's
mind my
okay.
teeth. Like I look at my teeth, I'm like, But the thing is, as well, like on that Zoom call, yeah, they'll be glancing at you, but they're mostly looking at their own camera. Like we're all so self-obsessed. That's just the silver lining of all this is, yeah, there's a certain level of kind of presentation that you can sort of like shine with and develop confidence and you know, if you're really like nervous and unclear, then people will be like, ugh. But after a certain point, it doesn't take that much to get to a point where it's not that it has to be perfect, it's just that it has to not be distractingly bad, and I think we can all achieve that, right?
I think that's the thing. Like good is actually a bit less than, not less than you think. As long as you're comfortable, then the
Yeah,
people around you will be comfortable with what you're saying. If you're happy with the words you're using and the way you're answering something, then that will come across, and that's the main thing. Like,
yeah. And is it
if you're,
working? If
and
if
that's
that's working as well, it doesn't even, you know, you can be like, oh, I hate how I said that, but if it worked, then it worked. Then don't worry about it, and
I
you'll get
do think.
better.
Yeah, I think that's so I remember doing this presentations masterclass and standing up. There were weirdly only two of us turned up, so we had a whole day with this brilliant communications masterclass guy, and who's lovely. And I recommended him actually afterwards to lots of other people. He's lovely.
Mm,
Anyway, we were like, okay, we're not going to do the curriculum because we've only got two people, and both of us were women. So he did a
right.
whole kind of different custom thing, and he was like, right, get up there, present. And I was like, this is when I got, so I stood there and I started talking about something and presenting. And he was like, what is coming across to us? Does she know what she's talking about? Is she interested in what she's talking about? Is she passionate about what she's talking about? That all came across. The fact that I
Mm,
waved my hands around, he was like, that's how you talk. Don't
yeah.
try and stop yourself waving your hands around. Don't worry about that. Maybe stop moving around so much. Maybe stop clicking a pen while you're presenting.
Mm.
These are all things. I have this podcast has made me very aware of how much I click stuff and
Oh yeah,
fiddle.
it's made me aware of that too.
So,
That's it.
I
Just don't have a clicky pen in your hand when you.
no,
Yeah.
I'm not allowed clicky pens
Yeah.
on my desk. But it's these kind of things that actually chances are that if you get feedback from somebody else, you're probably already doing a very good job
Yeah.
as well. And
Mm.
a bit of feedback that from somebody you trust that just helps you tweak a couple of things might just give you that extra confidence that will make you better anyway. Even
Mm.
if you don't fix that thing, it's like, do you know what? Thanks for telling me that, but actually I don't care. I am never going to pluck my eyebrows.
Yes, and then yeah, it's just don't procrastinate. Don't try and like get everything perfect up front. You can practice on your own 100 times. It's like, take it from a musician. Like I can practice something for 2 weeks, and then I can go on stage and something you just wouldn't happen when you. I mean, I don't know if this fits, but like if you practice not in the real situation, it's something's going to catch you out. So the first time I played music live solo in a big venue in this big room, the audience afterwards were like, every time you got loud, you'd like turn the volume down a bit. And I had this habit from being at home where I didn't want it to be too loud in the house, so I just
Wow.
automatically would turn the volume down a bit when something got big, and then I took that to stage because it was my first time doing it on my own on stage, and I just hadn't. I'd forgotten that that was just a bodily reaction to the situation. So there's no substitute for doing it for real, even if
Yeah, yeah.
badly. So find opportunities to do it badly for real as much as you can, because the more you can do it badly, the closer you can get to something good. And with that, I would also say I think there's a path from recorded and edited to live. So if you can, and it takes longer to do recording and editing, but if you can, like if you want to do a presentation, you can start by recording yourself on video and doing 1,000 takes and chopping it together from those takes until you get something that looks right. Even just to discover what your voice is, to discover what you like about your presentation, and then do that a few times, and then soon you'll just be able to do that in real life or in the flesh, and you won't need that whole editing process. But if you do really want to like figure out something, then recording and editing is a really good way to get on top of that. But again, if you don't put it out in the world, then I don't think you're learning nearly as much. So
yeah, practice.
Practice.
It's like, yeah,
and also spend loads of money on equipment.
Not really. We haven't spent loads of money on it. Well,
you bought a microphone, but I've spent a lot of money on equipment over the AV equipment. You can get cheap stuff, you can get very, very expensive stuff, and the expensive stuff does look better. But I'm using a phone. I'm not using my big camera today, but I'm thinking of not using my phone anymore and using my big camera, just because it does look a little bit nicer. And then, like, the first time I saw we both worked with Lorenzo Wood at Oyster, and the first time he'd taken a picture of me with his nice camera, and I looked at it, I was like, I sort of saw myself in a different way when it was a nice photo with a nice camera. And yeah, like, a bad camera will make you look worse, and a good camera will make you look better, and a bad microphone will make you sound worse, and a good microphone will make you sound better. So there is that whole dimension to it, but don't just, like, there's a lot you can fix about your own presentation before you need to start spending that kind of money on lights and cameras and microphones. We'll wait for Ivanka's picture to start moving again so I can see her reaction. There it is. Unless have you got anything to add? Have we covered everything for the day? That's
the only thing we haven't spoken about is the standing up versus sitting down, which probably doesn't, it's like and by the way, but I did recently see somebody. I sat through a bunch of a week's worth of plenaries at as an online conference, and there was varying degrees of quality. People that were very composed, people that were very good, people very practiced, blah, blah, blah. One of the better ones was definitely somebody who was standing up, and you could tell that they were standing up. And I think it's part of the way you carry yourself, or what most of us carry ourselves when we're standing up versus when we're sitting down. And I think that goes a little bit back to the voice coachy stuff as well, that understanding your voice, understanding that when you stand up and you open your chest up and you stand stronger and you've got your core going in your neck, you do project better, and it's for me. This is something I could actually go away and practice, is like when I'm online, sit properly.
You got to sit up, and because a lot of us that work on computers, our necks are bent forward, and your whole airway is then sort of kinked a little bit. Sorry, I'm not talking to the microphone, so I demonstrate that. And your airway is permanently kinked, and then muscles build around your shoulders that kind of like make it worse. So you've got to sort of be quite conscious about like making sure that airway can be opened up, because it just like gives body to yours. So yeah, like voice coaching is something I've done for singing, because I just wanted to be able to sing in my music, and I learned a lot from doing that, and I got the vocal exercises, but it sort of comes down to that projection, and you think you're too loud, but it sort of comes down to just opening up that airway between your diaphragm and your voice. But you've done some of that too, right?
Yeah, I've done a bit. I went to a voice coach. I didn't take it. I mean, I went a few times, part out of curiosity. I do like a teacher. I am the kind of, I just confessed this to my husband the other day, because we're going to weight training classes together. It's like, I do like to be taught how to do something properly. I enjoy it. So I went to see a voice coach a couple of times. I did not do the exercises religiously. I did not do anything like that. But I did learn a little bit about how my voice works in my body and which bits of it I do and don't like. So I think if for nothing else but out of pure curiosity, you don't have to want to be an opera singer or work on your presentation, just understanding a little bit how your body fits and how it all works. It's like going to Alexander technique, these kind of things that help you more aware. I think it is really interesting. I would, if you can, have a look.
And I think also, like, something I learned from my voice coaching was I had this value I had sort of value judgments about different parts. So like sort of like nasal voice, but he talked about, there's some singers that do a brilliant with that nasal voice, and there's nothing implicitly wrong with having that kind of tone. It's not better to be deep and boomy than it is to be high and nasally, but like you can, if you sort of understand it and you can maybe choose a little bit how much to use of which different aspects of your voice, then if you feel a little bit more in control rather than at the mercy of your whatever genes and environment, then that can definitely give you some confidence just in itself.
I think so. And so I think that would be the last bit that I was going to throw into this one. I think of the things that you can do to help you feel more confident.
Things that can be done.
Yeah.
So there we go. That's an episode of Can You See My Screen? If you want to learn more about the podcast, go to canyousseemyscreenpodcast.com. And you can find out. We'd like to hear learn about you a little bit, what you'd like to get out of this podcast, and what you did get out of it, and what you're trying to do. So we've got a little questionnaire on there where you can tell us a bit about yourself. And we'll see you next time. So hope things are going well. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye 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 bye.